I'm also the CEO of Pajaro Valley Prevention and Student Assistance. And people ask me, why are you involved in housing when you're in the business of providing mental health and case management support to children and families? Ever wondered why children have stress, anxiety, and everything else? Ever wonder why families need services like what we provide? It's because of things like the lack of housing or the expensive nature of housing in our county. So it's very, very important, those of us who are advocates for children and families, to be involved in addressing the root causes of what we see in our clinics. First, I'd like to just acknowledge a couple of sponsors that have made today's event possible. This is Affordable Housing Month, so thanks to all of you who have been participating in different activities and learning more about what we are doing here in our county, but also perhaps even at the state level with the discourse that's happening at that level. Driscoll's Berries, Health Trust of the Pajaro Valley, Lookout Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, Cabrillo College, Community Action Board, Community Bridges, Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, Eden Housing, Mid-Penn Housing, and PVPSA are proud sponsors of today's event. So thank you everyone for just being awesome partners in this endeavor. Also, a very special thank you and recognition to the City of Watsonville and the County of Santa Cruz. Thank you so much for being partners in this work. We appreciate you. I do want to acknowledge some of our board members that are here today. Gretchen Hart, are you here, Gretchen? There you are. Dawn Lane, who of course we all know and love. My amazing sister Paz. You're here, Pazzy. There we go. Oh, by the way, that's what we call her at home, Pazzy. So that's it. You guys can call her Pazzy. Jane Barr. And is that it? Did I miss anybody? I hate it when I get a list of names and then somebody said, you didn't call me. I apologize, not my intention. I also want to thank, and I don't see Dominic Dursa, but he may be squeezing in today. I know that he was intending to be here and is intending to be here representing Assemblymember Rivas' office. Jonathan Engelman, are you here from Senator Laird's office? Also intended to arrive. And Councilmember Lowell Hurst, I know you're here. There we go. Well, you're really incognito, Lowell.
Yeah, that's the way I go to the grocery store.
Thank you, Lowell. And of course, we do have the Honorable Rebecca Garcia with us today as well, City Council member. I do want to note that our Council member Paco Estrada intended to be here to MC the event, but is due to personal matters couldn't be here. And we are really, really thankful to Rebecca, who stepped up, another staunch advocate of affordable housing, Rebecca. And with that, I would like to introduce Rebecca, who will be emceeing today's event. I just want to say a few just comments about Rebecca, since I have the mic, and that's the privilege I get for having the mic. Rebecca, I have known you for decades. And whether it be social justice causes, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be familia-related issues, you have been a strong advocate for our community. And I just want to use this space to thank you for your leadership. I very much appreciate you. Okay, Rebecca Garcia.
She did that on purpose to make me cry. Well, Housing Santa Cruz County welcomes you to the Housing for a Healthy Watsonville. My name is Rebecca Garcia, and I'm the former mayor and city council member of Watsonville City. The issue of affordable housing in Watsonville began in the late 1980s. I, with other community members, attended city council meeting after city council meeting, pleading for affordable housing. We were aware that there were multiple farm working families living in single units because they could not afford the rent. So we were going to city council asking, we want affordable housing. The city council, of course, ignored us. Then in 1989, a lawsuit was won to change from at-large elections to single-member district elections. A new city council was created, of which Lowell was part, and they listened and created a housing task force, of which I became chair. We met, researched, and discussed proposing an exclusionary ordinance that requires affordable housing for every new housing development. The council in 1991, with community involvement, adopted an inclusionary ordinance at 25% affordable housing. Unfortunately, we did not get a lot of housing developments. So the council, 10 years later, in 2001, changed the percentage to 15% for developments of 7 to 50 units and 20% for more than 50 units. Suzi Merriam, who I'll introduce later, who is the Community Development Director, will talk about the success we've had with the inclusionary ordinance and the several other affordable housing programs the city has. But we need to do even more, and that is why we're all here together today. Recently, I received 2 phone calls. One said that her rent had been increased 30% and she was living on Social Security and she was afraid she could become homeless. The other, who lived in an apartment complex, told me that the landlord was offering $2,000 to the tenants to move out so he could increase the rent from low rent to market rate rent. For those living in poverty, $2,000 is a lot of money. And of course, we have all those who were impacted by COVID and now fear eviction because of the rent owed. Housing is a health issue, and we must do what we can to address it. We will be listening to 3 speakers who will address this issue, and I have the honor to introduce the first speaker. Monica Morales was 2 years old when her family emigrated from Mexico to Watsonville. She grew up attending local elementary schools, graduating from Watsonville High School while her mother worked in nearby agriculture fields and canneries. Fast forward to 2022, and Monica is now the new Health Service Director for the County of Santa Cruz. Monica?
Okay, how do I do this? Do I shift it, you think, so I can look at what I'm presenting to you guys? I don't have it memorized, apologies. Let me try it this way. Perfect, thank you. So you could actually take this off if you're wondering when you're making a presentation. I'm gonna take it off because it's a little easier. There we go, okay. So thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure for me to be here. I've been, really trying to understand how I would contextualize this presentation for folks because it's so personal to me. Personal because I did grow up here and I understood the housing, matters, and it's sad to come back after 20 years and things are worse. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And it's worse in the sense that the inequity piece just continues to exacerbate the health outcomes of many of our residents here in South County. So I think you guys are aware in terms of we have a significant housing gap. And so you've been able to see with time, just, we have inadequate housing market. There's limitations on income because of the type of economy that we have here in Watsonville and our surrounding county. In addition, we still have faced a lot of discrimination, and I want to talk about that too in terms of the impact of discrimination on health. And we have a rich sense of services, but sometimes the services needed around behavioral health, continue to lack, right? And some key clinical services, we have to ship people over the hill to get some of that care as well. So all of this for us, we know, really trigger the stress levels of individuals. And then you add the fact that there's also a lot of personal issues going on. People, leave each other, they separate. That changes the dynamic of an income stability for individuals. We just heard the stories right now, for example. We also know that health issues, what happens when you live in a home, or you're gonna get kicked out of a home and you have crutches or a wheelchair, right? So all of these different stressors really also impact someone's ability to process all the dynamics that they're going through, and as a result impacts their health. You then have to add displacement, housing instability, and homelessness that we're seeing across every freeway that you drive in California. It's a shame. It really is a shame for us to be struggling. And really visually noticing that. My kids ask me, what is that, Mom? They're 5 and 8 years old. And so it's harder for me to explain to them, people don't have home. And like, oh, there's one, and that breaks my heart. And so I'm just highlighting it for folks because I know all of us here care about the issue. And I want to bring it back to what this means. So I'm sure you guys have heard the determinants of health. So what does that really mean? And we talk about it and we talk about equity, but truly what it's saying is that there's key factors, social factors, economics, education, food, systems. And you see there that housing is one of the key social determinants of health. If you then focus down, what it's really pointing to is that your housing status really impacts your life expectancy, your mortality, how you actually are able to navigate your mental, physical health. Now think about just really quickly what I just highlighted, right? So we know all these social factors impact someone's health. Housing is part of it. And then think about Watsonville. Think about the dynamics that we're facing here, where we know that home ownership is really low here. We know that renters, pretty much, you work to basically have a roof over your head. Whether that roof is adequate is a different story, because we know folks live in garages. We know the garages are also, they kind of break them in two or divide them in 2 or 3, and you have different, literally just bunk beds kind of all stacked up as well. We also know that 60% of the renters in South County spend 1/3 of their income on their rent, right? And for me, I can attest to this. I was one of those kids. I used to live in Riverside, and then I lived by the Pajaro River. And then I lived on East Lake by where all the fields are now the new housing development. And if you're familiar with those houses, you know where I grew up, right? So what I remember very clearly is my mom working in the canneries and, in the fields in the morning, right? Then like the canneries at night. And then still somehow having time to make food or go massage someone to earn income. So 3 jobs, and we still couldn't get our own home, right? And we had a family living in the other room, someone living with us in the hallway area, and then another room in our room, like another kind of like setup in our room. So think about the impact of a child or even a mom, right? And their mental state, the stress levels, the anxiety, because they're working so hard and they still can't afford to even rent a 2-bedroom for their kids. And so for me, thinking about what does that mean in terms of health, it means that, people obviously are struggling with chronic diseases, that people's life expectancy is lower, that we see students really, their achievement gap, lower than other folks that have stable housing. So again, just really highlighting what you guys know, but really bringing it down to housing does equal good physical and mental health for our community. There's no doubt why we have a higher rate of deaths of chronic disease in South County, or why we saw COVID really taking over our community in South County, right? Housing makes a huge impact. Not just, during COVID, but even before COVID, we were dealing with these issues. So yeah, can someone eat better? Absolutely, yes. But ultimately, research is highlighting that it's really stress from determinants that's really impacting people's diabetes levels or the rate of diabetes or heart disease in our communities. So just a few more stats to kind of share with you around the linkages that I'm highlighting for you. So part of it is to also think about the way that it not only links to determinants in health, but our economy. I think the question for us is, what type of future do we want to create in South County or even in our county as a whole? If we don't deal with the housing crisis, our economy it will be impacted. And what I mean by that is, I'm having to learn a lot of, where do you live? I'm asking folks, where do you live? Oh, I live in Gilroy. A lot of people driving in, a lot of the new folks leaving either to the valley or leaving the state because it's so expensive. So we really truly need to then reflect, so who's left? Like who's actually coming in? And how is that gonna transform the way that we anticipate the future of South County or the future of our community? I know folks think that sometimes if we focus on growing what we have here, and I just don't know if that's gonna be the case, because people are leaving. Even the ones that have roots here are having a hard time coming back to establish themselves, or the ones that are here, their family have to leave because they can't afford the housing. So it's a serious, I think, reflection that we all need to do. What type of community will we have in 5 or 10 years as we think about the impact of affordability? I want to come back to the income piece, because what we have learned through research is that if people have stable homes, or they're not, they're not working they're not using all of their paychecks to actually afford home, they tend to actually spend more. Does it make sense? Don't we do that? All of us here do that, right? So, oh, let's go to the movies, or hey, yeah, let's go out to eat, or let's go shopping here at this mall that's literally, I went to the mall last month, I almost started to cry. Because no one's shopping, no one can afford to shop. The majority of the stores are closed, and it's heartbreaking. And so again, people can't afford it, they're not shopping, right? So if we have stable housing, affordable housing, we know that it will transform into a more vibrant economy. Is it working? Okay. So again, I think the key point for us is to think a little bit more that having, housing impacts health, but it also builds a resilient economy for us. And we really need to hopefully focus on that, because we do have a large group in our county who truly believe that we need to keep things status quo. We haven't really invested, from my perspective, coming back, I'm just reflecting, we haven't invested in the levels that we need to bring affordable housing into our community. So if we want to pick up downtown and revive downtown, we need to fix our housing crisis that we have in the South County.
Downtown's going down.
I thought twice about adding this slide, but I do think that for me, as I'm coming back, I've only been back 4 months, I'm asking around who's working on housing, right? And who's actually challenging the perception about whether or not we should build more housing. And we have obviously champions here that we're grateful for, but it definitely has not changed, which is pretty depressing, to be honest with you, in terms of we really need to change everyone's perception about housing, everyone's values around housing, who deserves stable housing and who doesn't deserve housing. And we need bold leadership in our county, people that will stand up. We have a very important measure right now in South County. No one's really addressing it, and I've asked around, who's addressing the different measures, and this particular one we're very silent around. So again, it's that bold leadership that we need to really move forward and create systemic shift on the perception of housing and who needs housing. So with that, I will conclude, and thank you, and I hope this is helpful for folks as we're discussing what our next steps will be.
Our next speaker is Suzi Merriam. Suzi has worked for the city of Watsonville for 20 years. She became director of the Community Development Department in 2017. In her role as director, she oversees the building division, engineering, the planning division, and housing. And with that, I introduce Suzi.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, Monica, you gave us a good challenge. So how many people are familiar with Watsonville? Okay, great, wonderful. Then I can condense this a lot because apparently I have 10 minutes, so I hope you started the timer or I'll talk forever. All right, so just to talk, okay, yeah, I'm pointing it at the computer. So a little bit about demographics for all of us. We're a population of a little over 52,000 people. 83% of Watsonville residents are Latino. We have a low number of college graduates, as you can see on the screen. A high percentage of young people, at 30% are 18 or under. And then we have a small but growing portion of senior citizens. In the last estimates were, I think, 10.2, and now it's up to 10.8. And then our current median income has increased from $53,000 to a whopping $61,000. Just to keep in mind, $61,000 for a family of 4 qualifies you for, I believe, very low income eligibility. So just to kind of put that in perspective. And then Watsonville is we're a compact community. It's 6 square miles. And see, we've got 14,655 housing units, but we've got a great mix. We've got single family homes. We've got the senior villages down on the southeast portion of the city. We have multifamily homes, and we have a lot of mobile home parks. So we have a good mix of single, multifamily housing, senior housing, and apartments. And this is just a copy of the map that's up there that hopefully everyone looks at and puts your stickies up and says, okay, this is where I envision housing in Watsonville in the future. But one thing I just want to say about this is we've got affordable housing all over the city. It's not just in one area. And the reason for that is that we have had an affordable housing ordinance, as Rebecca said, since 1991, and then the current ordinance is from 2001. So that's 30 years of the city having requirements to provide affordable housing. And of course, as Monica pointed out, it's not enough. But all I can say is it's better than nothing, and we're keeping moving forward. And a lot of those recent state laws are helping us, especially in the midst of NIMBYism and people not wanting projects because of X, Y, and Z. A lot of the state laws are circumventing some of that so that there's no option to really argue or vote something down. So our affordable housing ordinance requires a percentage of affordable units in all multifamily developments of 7 or more units. It sets income limits. It requires in lieu fees for developments that are less than 7 units, and it also provides incentives for affordable housing development. Oops, I forgot to change the slide. There you go. Unit requirements. Okay, so I'll go through this really quickly. So this is for sale requirements for a project that has 7 to, really it's 49 units. And that's they have to provide a total of 15% of the units to affordable families. And then with over 50 units, that's a 20% requirement. And we'll go through, I've got a map coming up soon of all the recent projects. So that's a total of 20% that is going to lower income families. And then for rental projects, there we go. 7 or more units, again, we have a 20% affordability requirement. And this has ended up working relatively well, despite sometimes hearing for-profit developers grumbling about affordable units, because what they can do is they can accept housing authority vouchers, or Section 8. The city went down. Section 8 vouchers. So it ends up penciling for developers, and it's ended up working well here because, as you'll see, we've got a lot of public and private developments of housing going on. All right, so the assistance that our housing division provides, which I'm really proud that with redevelopment agencies going away several years ago, we still have a really thriving housing division that provides a ton of services for the Watsonville community. That includes, of course, low interest loans for nonprofit housing developments. We've got first time home buyer loans, as well as programs to fill in the gaps for people to be able to purchase homes. We've got a rental assistance program. I'll go a little bit into that. We've got a landlord incentive program that we work with the Housing Authority on, so that it's an incentive for property owners to accept Section 8 voucher holders, and kind of provide some insurance that if damage occurs on their unit, that there's money available to fix it. We have housing rehab programs, and we're also working on an ADU loan program. That's still in the works. All right, housing highlights. All right, this is just in the last year, things that we've been doing. We had 59 ADU applications last year, 21. Sorry, yes, ADU, accessory dwelling units. Okay, for them, yeah, so we've got 21 so far this year and counting. We had 534 Watsonville households served under the state rental assistance program related to the COVID epidemic. As the state program has wound down in March, we have ramped up a local rental assistance program for those families that for whatever reason were not able to participate in the state program, and that might be because of residency issues, DACA issues, things like that. We have already helped 52 families through the local program with $285,000 expended to help people pay their rent and keep them in their homes. Let's see, we in the last year have approved 196 housing units through planning, and that's 4 projects. Let's see, we've got a responsible landlord engagement initiative to work with either problem tenants or problem landlords. And let's see, and we are also going to be tackling our general plan update. We're going to be issuing a request for proposals for consultants to help us do that. And that, again, will look at increasing density, especially along our major corridors, so that we can support more housing. All right, here's our map of recent projects. Let's see, most of these, I want to say, are under construction, or they're going to be under construction very soon, which is super exciting. And yeah, let's see. I think the only one that we need to add up there is we have just passed on a project to Habitat for Humanity at 36 Airport Road, and that's gonna get at least, we're hoping, somewhere between 9 and 12 Habitat homes. They may also have ADUs, which is great. All right, I'm gonna go through 2 just kind of sample recent housing projects, and Jane, you're gonna be very familiar with this one. This is the project going in at 1482 Freedom Boulevard. This was it's an Eden housing project. It's 53 units, and this was the first SB 35 streamlined housing project to be approved in the county. Yay! It was, they submitted a pre-application to us in July of 2020. In December 2020, they formally submitted their application, and the council approved the project in February of 2021, so within that 3-month period. And they have just pulled the building permits for the project, so stay tuned, you'll see that. And then the next one that is in the works is 558 Main Street. It's called The Residence. Oh no, She stood up. I'm out of time. There's so much more to talk about. And again, this one, even though it was not SB 35, this one went through the planning process and was approved in less than a year. So just to let you know that we really, housing is a strategic plan goal for our council and the city, and we really mean it. We are down here trying to push through projects as fast as we absolutely can. So I was going to talk about really quick the downtown specific plan, but what I will say with the downtown specific plan is, number one, we want to increase the density downtown. So what we're looking at is the possibility of maxing out at a little over 2,000 units in the specific plan area, which it's a lot bigger than just the downtown core. So aside from making it safer for pedestrians and bringing in business and revitalization, we really want to bring more people into the downtown that both live and work. And then finally, that Measure U thing that I think you were referring to. So can I talk just like, okay. So Measure U is an urban limit line. It's like a growth boundary for the city of Watsonville, which you see on the map. It was approved by voters in 2002, and essentially it said, okay, these are the areas, Watsonville, that you can expand and grow into. And there was one area for economic development, and the rest were for housing. So that urban limit line is set to expire in the next few years. And so what's on the ballot for November is the question of, do we keep this urban limit line until 2040, or do we let Measure U expire? And there are a lot of thoughts for and against, and it's not at this point the city's role to take a position on this, so I'm not gonna say anything, but that's really what Measure U is asking. And if Measure U does expire, what it means is that anytime the city is looking to annex any property for growth, we will have to go through a separate voter initiative. And that's it.
I saw a hand go out, but we're not going to take any questions at this time until the end possibly. And as you heard it from Suzi, Watsonville has been working for many, many years, since 1991, to begin to provide affordable housing here. But as been told, we don't even get close to where we need in terms of that housing. The next speaker is Carlos Palacios. I first met Carlos when I was considering running for city council in 2014. I was elected, but then he was appointed as Assistant County Administrative Officer, Santa Cruz County, and he left as city manager of Watsonville. However, since 2017, he has now been the county administrator officer, and I know you've heard many, many things about him, so Carlos.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I'd like to start by talking about the county in general in terms of its role with housing and land use. One thing that it's important to note is that Santa Cruz County is an outlier with regard to counties in California. There's 58 counties in our state. Most counties, the majority of people live in cities, and a relatively small portion live in the unincorporated area. For example, Santa Clara County, only 5%, actually it's like 4% of the population lives in the unincorporated area of Santa Clara County. 96% in Santa Clara County live in a city. So most housing, most development takes place in city limits, and that's more common. Santa Cruz County, 50% of the population lives in the unincorporated area. So we're unusual in that sense because we have actually about half of the county's population in which we provide municipal services. meaning planning, how, you know, and housing, law enforcement, libraries, parks, all those things that you think of when you think of a city. The county actually does that for 140,000 people. So we're actually the biggest city in the county, but we don't get any more money. So what happens is we get the same amount of money, in fact less than Santa Clara, but they only take 4% for municipal services, and then the rest are county services. We have to provide both municipal services and county-wide services for everybody. So that's an unusual thing about county government, which puts a lot of fiscal constraints on us in terms of our budget, and also land use. It's unusual for a county to be so active in terms of development. The other thing, Santa Cruz County is subject to Measure J, which was a voter-approved initiative more than almost 50 years ago now, which basically established in the unincorporated area an urban services line in which he said this is where development's going to take place, and then outside that urban services line basically said development is not going to take place here, and that is mostly our agricultural areas. So most of the county's land mass is protected from development because of Measure J. The areas that are not protected by Measure J are difficult to build in often. They're actually in the mountains often, or in the coastal zone, very difficult building environments. So anyway, it's important to have that context when you think of the county in terms of its role in providing housing. There are three main areas that we're involved in with housing. One is traditional affordable housing, which like Suzi was talking about, we do that as well. And then we also are very active in trying to provide permanent supportive housing. This is housing that also includes case management, often mental health counseling, rehabilitation, and so forth, focused on those people who are experiencing homelessness. And then, of course, our zoning, which is meant to try and facilitate development by the private sector. So we have three current affordable housing projects right now. One is 17th and Capitola, which was they had the groundbreaking yesterday. It's actually 56 affordable housing units in Live Oak. It's going to be rental units in addition to a medical clinic and a dental clinic. We have a Habitat for Humanity project on Harper Street, also in that same area, 11 affordable ownership housing units in that project. And then we're also working on Pippin 2, which is on Atkinson Lane. That's actually 80 affordable units as well. And then in the within the last decade, we built Shapiro Knolls on Minto Road. That was 88 affordable units, and Aptos Blue, which was 40 affordable units in Aptos. We also did we also partnered with the city on Pippin 1, which was on Atkinson Lane for 46 units. We have 4 current Project Home Key projects. This is for permanent supportive housing. One of them is Veterans Village, which is in Ben Lomond. It's 19 supportive housing units. It just got approved. We just heard that last week. We have another project here in Watsonville, Roadway Inn. It's 94 units. We haven't heard yet if it's going to get approved. We're hopeful. And then you may have read about Park Avenue on SoCal, in SoCal on Park Avenue. This is a permanent supportive housing project, 35 units. A lot of controversy over it. You may have heard about it in the news. We still have not heard about that. And then we have partnered with Housing Matters in Santa Cruz for another Project Home Key. In addition, we've done a lot of zoning changes. So zoning changes to try and facilitate more housing. One is what we called our permanent room housing projects. These are former small hotels in the unincorporated area, many of them in the mountains, some of them in the beach area. We allowed them to be changed into permanent housing from being hotels. They're little small projects, typically 9 or 10 units. They often were cabins, and we allowed them to be changed. There was 61 total that were just converted from hotels to rental units. We've also been very active with accessory dwelling units. We think that is very promising. We developed an online toolkit, design and finance guidebooks. We have an ADU loan program. We also have provided ADU technical assistance as well. And then one of our biggest things that we're doing is that we are doing a general plan update. And so Sustainable Santa Cruz, we have spent almost a decade doing that, and we're now at the point we're actually getting ready to amend the general plan. So this is within the urban services line, mainly in the Live Oak area around transportation corridors. And the idea is to do what the city's talking about doing on Main Street, is to increase the density by a lot. And so the idea is that in those areas where the county is more urban and where there's transportation, that we really try and densify as much as we can and change the zoning. And of course, that's very controversial. You can imagine other meetings. Some of them have been good, some of them have been a little more challenging, but it's what we should be doing, right? And that's really what Measure J was the goal of Measure J, and I think the goal ultimately when Measure U was developed was trying to develop at higher density levels within the urban footprint. Although, you know, it's challenging, we know that. You know, we've all been in those hearings and had people, the way they react. So Sustainable Santa Cruz, our general plan update, we're getting ready basically to do the EIR on that and then actually do the general plan amendment. So we're hopeful that within the next year we will actually approve that general plan amendment, and then we will be done with our much awaited general plan update and then allow for more dense development. So we are doing lots of different initiatives, and I know this is an important thing. Those of you who don't know me, I've lived here now for 30 years in Watsonville. I still live in Watsonville. I was one of the co-chairs of the Measure U committee way back 20 years ago. It's hard to believe now it's expiring. That's interesting. But the issue is that when I was city manager in Watsonville, I was city manager for almost 2 decades. And while in Watsonville, I was part of Rotary. And I remember a very interesting incident that happened once. We were doing a job shadowing with high school students from Watsonville High. And I took 3 students with me, and they job shadowed with me for three hours. And we drove around Watsonville, and I talked to them about all the different projects that we were working on, and we got to one affordable housing project, which is rental units. And I explained how we had developed it. I was really proud of it. It had been very difficult to develop, a lot of controversy, a lot of difficulty getting the funding. And one of the young men who was with me said, "I live there." And I said, "Whoa, that's really cool. You live in this apartment building?" He says, "Yeah." And I said, "How has it been?" And he was a young guy. He was probably like maybe a freshman or sophomore in high school. And what he told me is, he said, "You know, most of my life I lived in a garage with my mom. Most of my life." I said, in fact, he said, all I remember is living in a garage. That's all I remember. And he told me that him and his mom lived in a garage. They rented it. They had a bed and a space heater and a hot plate, and that's pretty much where they lived for most of his life. And so he said that how difficult it was, that there was often rats, there was spiders and cockroaches. It was really cold in the winter to try and study. He said that they had to ask the family when they wanted to take a shower. They had to, and sometimes the family wouldn't let them in. So they had to ask the family when they wanted to use the bathroom. They had to knock and say, "Can we use the bathroom?" And he's told me how difficult it was. And so he said when this apartment building was built, and there was a lottery, and they entered the lottery. And we know how these lotteries go, right? We often get 2,000 applicants for 50 units or something. This particular project had about 190 units or something, and I think I seem to remember getting over 2,000 applications for that lottery. And so he said we entered the lottery, and it was like a miracle. We won. We got it. And so he said, I actually, when we won, I got in my apartment. He says, I have my own bedroom now. And so I said, how is that? How's that going? And he told me, it's like heaven. It's like I live in heaven now. He was just so happy, and he told me about what a difference it made in his life. So I think all of us who are working for this understand those personal stories and how real this is for people. And that's why I'm really happy to be in Santa Cruz County now, to be advocating for housing and to be part of, hopefully, more successful projects in the future. Thank you.
As you heard, there's a lot of similarities in terms of the activities both the county and the city are doing. And the reason that occurs is because the city housing staff speaks to the county housing staff, and they learn from each other, and that's what we need to do more of. I would like to now introduce two leaders of Housing Santa Cruz County. I first began to work with them in preparation for the housing bond in 2018. Jane Barr is Associate Director of Real Estate Development for the nonprofit affordable housing developer Eden Housing. And Don Lane is the former mayor of Santa Cruz City and the chair of Housing Santa Cruz. Jane and Don.
Hi, I'm Jane Moore with Eden Housing and a longtime resident of Corralitos. I just wanted to give you an update on several projects that are happening in Watsonville. You've heard a little bit about them from Mid-Penn Housing. Miles Lane is 72 units. It will have 35 units for farm workers, 6 units for homeless, and the construction will start in May with an estimated date of about 2 years to build. Their Pippin project you've already heard about, that's 80 units off of Atkinson. 39 of those units will be for farm workers, and 12 will be for Housing Choices Coalition clients who are mentally disabled. Construction will start in June and expected to be finished in January of 2024. And the 1482 project on Freedom Boulevard, that's for those of you who've been here a long time, it's the old Riverside Nursery site, and that's our project at Eden. 53 units, of which 37 will be for farm workers. 37 will have project-based vouchers from the Housing Authority. 25 units will be for farm workers, and 6 units will be for homeless, and construction started in March, and we expect to be finished by the fall of 23. So that is 152, 155, that's 205 units. That'll be coming online right around plus or minus 2024. And as you've heard the stories here, what a difference it makes. And I appreciate the earlier talk about the health services. And I always look at our community as a three-legged stool, and what's important is housing. And if you've got housing and can afford it, then you've got more money for health. And if you've got more housing, you've got the stability to learn well in school and really take advantage of what's offered to you in school. And then you've got the ability to grow into whatever you want to be and have a good, stable future. So those are the things that are important to me, and I think to the community, and I appreciate what's being done in health. I appreciate our school district and the county office ed and all they do for our students, and we work hard to get affordable housing to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Jane. And one of the reasons we wanted to make sure Jane came up was kind of not just Jane herself, but kind of representing the people who build affordable housing, and to really acknowledge them. Jane and other folks from Eden are here, folks from Mid-Penn are here. The Housing Authority plays a role in developing housing, and we just want to really acknowledge that that's at the heart of where we're going, is to get folks, those organizations, more support so they can build even more affordable housing. So thanks, Jane, and thanks all of you for doing that. So I just want to say a word or two about Housing Santa Cruz County. Like many of the speakers we've heard from, we share the goal of having a thriving county, thriving families, thriving neighborhoods. And thriving is such a key word in how I think we all look at where we want to be and where we want to go. As you know, this event is part of Housing Santa Cruz County's Affordable Housing Month, and we have a whole bunch of different activities going on throughout the county. Seriously, we have been so committed to being in every part of the county as we do this work, because it's going to take every corner of the county to participate in this. We have so much need for affordable housing. We can't rely on 1 or 2 jurisdictions. We need to rely on every neighborhood and every jurisdiction to do its part. So we try to have presence in all those places. So there are more events to come. Hope you'll have a chance to look at our Affordable Housing Month schedule. One of those events is the groundbreaking, is it May 25th? May 25th for that Eden project, so hope maybe we'll see somebody there. But then beyond that, we do ongoing advocacy work around both projects and issues and policy, and we want to make sure you know, follow what we're doing there. A lot of educational events, not just during Affordable Housing Month, but throughout the year. So we look forward to seeing you in that way, participating in that way. But mostly we want to just encourage you. You are people who you're here because you care about affordable housing and what it means to the people of this community. So one of the main things we want to do is have you take the information that you both have already and what you picked up today and talk to other people in your community. That's as much as advocacy. It's about just connecting, engaging, having good conversations about what we can do about affordable housing in our community. That's what Housing Santa Cruz County is all about. So we encourage you to join our email list and just follow the work. We have a good newsletter. We have ways to help you be an advocate without putting a lot of time in. We know you're busy people. You're working on other issues as well. So please take a look at our advocacy tools.
And while you're talking about advocacy,
Yes.
back on the table on the left where Carlos is standing right now, I have some EDA brochures, but what I do have there is an address you can go on the internet for Eden. And if you have people who you know need affordable housing, that's our interest list. And so I've cut up a bunch of slips. Take them to all your friends who need affordable housing and let them know. That's not the final lottery, but at least you'll get information about our occupancy. And that's what community is, sharing opportunities for everyone.
Right, and speaking of that, I'm so glad you said that, Jane, for that, but also, even if you don't need some of the resources yourself that are in the back of the room, take a minute to look at what's there so that you're knowledgeable and can pass that information along or point people in the right direction. That's part of what we're trying to do here, is just create this incredible rich network of information sharing and housing resources. So please take a look at that. But in the end, the most important thing we want to do is ask you to stay involved on this issue. That's what our purpose is to get more and more people involved and make it easy to stay involved. And on that note, I want to introduce our final speaker. And before she comes up, I won't even do that. I'm just going to introduce Elizabeth Madrigal, who works in the housing group of the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, and she's going to tell you about the next opportunity we are all going to have to work on addressing affordable housing in South County. Elizabeth, welcome.
Okay, I will try to keep my comments brief. But we, through the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership in collaboration with Housing Santa Cruz County, South County Housing Collaborative, and just all of the other amazing groups here, are working on putting together a cafecito. I know in the past, Bev has partnered with the city of Watsonville to put one of these together. This cafecito will be focused on the housing element, and we'll be hosting it June 2nd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. It'll only be virtual and in Spanish, so we're really hoping you all can make it out and spread the word to get community members involved in this process that really touches on everyone's lives, and that we are really seeing as an effort to advance the 3 Ps, so production, protection, and I'm blanking on the other one. And preservation. Thank you all.
So with that, I want to thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank Rebecca for hosting, thank our guest speakers for really excellent presentations. I want to encourage you, they're all here for a few more minutes, so if you have questions or want to chat with them, please do that. And then don't forget, we're going to put the maps back up, get better tape. Take a minute and participate in our housing exercise. Even though this is not scientific, it is such an important part of where we're going in all our communities, is to think about where will the housing go. And we want all of you and everyone in the community to start talking about that. What are the best places to build more affordable housing? So weigh in on that with us, and then have a cookie to reward yourself. Thanks.
Thank you, John.